Hello, and welcome to today's embodied cooking class with me, Leanne Brown. Today we are going to be making a pear cake. It's been adapted several times. It's from my book, Good and Cheap. In there, I made it a peach cake, sort of very summery. I think the original recipe that I was working with was an apple cake. I've made it with mango, I've made it with pineapple, I've made it with berries. It's really just this lovely, simple, rich butter cake with fruit in it. So I hope you'll enjoy it. And before we get started, I do want to warn you. So we're going to be creating the cake. We're going to get it in the oven, but it does take an hour to bake. So I will say goodbye at that point, and I will send along a photograph of what the final product looks like, just so that you have that as a reference. But I think that it would maybe be stretching the bounds of this for me to have us do an hour-long meditation waiting for the cake to bake. But I wanted to show you just a baking recipe here, and how we can, of course, still bring our embodied process to baking as well as cooking. So how are you? I hope you're doing well. And sometimes I know we're not together, but that's something that you can ask yourself internally. How are you right now? And really listen for the answer. Not make an assumption. Not sort of thinking, how are you, the way that you might respond with someone, not a stranger, but someone you don't know particularly well. It's like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. Like, how are you right now? So let's just ask ourselves that. And then based on the response, let's maybe create an intention for our time together for this baking process. What is that you want to manifest through our time together? What do you want to feel? How do you want to be? Something you want more of in your life? Okay, that's great. And then we're going to start with a breathing exercise. I think we're going to return to Nadi Shodhana, the one I taught the other week, an alternate nostril breathing. So we're going to start by taking our right hand and closing the left nostril with our ring finger. And you can rest your other two fingers here, or you can curl them down, whatever is most comfortable. And then we're going to use your thumb to block the right side when it's time for that. So we're going to start with inhale, exhale, and then we're going to block the left nostril. Breathe in fully through the right. Just pause for a moment while we block the right nostril and exhale out the left. All the way to the bottom of the breath. Inhale again through the left. Pause, and then release your breath out of the right nostril, blocking your left. Exhale to the bottom, pause, inhale again. Pause, block the right nostril, exhale at the left. Inhale again. Pause, block the left nostril, and exhale at the right. And I'll let you do a few rounds on your own, working to slow down the breath.
We don't want the breath to be catching. We just want it to be a smooth flow that is naturally slowing down as we relax into the technique. And let your next exhale out the left nostril be your last one. Bring your hand down. Just take a moment to notice how you feel. Again, with no assumptions of what that should be. Just truly asking oneself, how do you feel now? Okay. Now let's get started with our cake. All right, so we need 4 pears. And we're gonna actually start by cutting them up and putting them in this bowl with a little bit. With pears, it's not such a big thing. They're not gonna go brown too quickly, but I am going to add this actually you can see I've used up all the zest and it's getting very dry, but it'll still have a bit of juice inside. So I'm gonna use that juice just to preserve the color. You know, any fruit after you cut it will start to go a little brown as the sugars oxidize with the air. Woo! Flying. And I know a lot of people find baking to be kind of naturally therapeutic, something that's a little more calming than maybe cooking, possibly because it's done like this, usually quietly and slowly. Nobody's in a rush, maybe, to have cake or cookies. I mean, sometimes we are, but it's not in the same way that we might feel that rush to get breakfast finished and get out the door, or everybody's so hungry at the end of the day with supper. It's a little more naturally restful. We're usually doing it because we can, not because we have to. And so I am quartering this pear, and then I'm quartering it again. And I'm just gently placing them in the bowl because pears are quite delicate. And these are, that one was nice and ripe. This one is nice and ripe. Ooh. This one is the only one that's not super ripe. So they're quite delicate. And they have that extraordinary aroma, really floral aroma that pears naturally have. I mean, everything that fruit is naturally floral because it comes from flowering trees, but there's some that have more of it presented to us than others. And I do think pears are one of those. Probably because they do have such a delicate flavor and smell. It's almost hard to describe. It's sweet and floral and specifically pear-like. There's a sort of bitterness that runs through it also, which is actually really nice. Maybe a counterpoint to the sweetness. And the texture, of course, is really specific. Sort of grainy, but in a pleasant way. But that graininess can also be too grainy. When it gets overly ripe or just not the best pear. But there's this sort of ideal amount of graininess as well. Comment if you know what I mean. Pears were one of my favorite fruits growing up. They're still one of my favorites, but I think also I just like fruit so much. It's hard to choose a favorite. I like the fruit that is in season, basically at any given time. It's my other ripe one. Yeah. You know what? I think I'm actually just going to do 3 pears because I think we're using a round pan. And I think this is going to be a lot of pear. And if we are wanting for more, it's looking like we should put more in, then I'll cut up another pear. You can really jam a lot of fruit into this. You know, for the peach, version, I really add a lot of peaches, but I'm also baking it in a square or a big rectangular dish. And this one is a round dish, so it's just a little harder to fit quite so much fruit in. I'm just thinking about that. You could do this with berries too, just like a ton of berries. But yeah, it's just this lovely, simple butter cake that just sort of bakes up around and encases all the beautiful fruit. And it's really, really nice. And you can add, I'm going to add cardamom today, but you could do cinnamon, you could do ginger. Actually, grated ginger root would be so nice. Just the vanilla that's in the batter would work also. You want to keep it just completely fruit-centric. You could do lemon zest would be, of course, wonderful. A bit more flavor. Okay, so our pears are there, and then let's see if I can even get through this extremely hard lemon. We might have to just skip the lemon juice today. Woo! Which really wouldn't be the end of the world. Okay, we've got a little bit happening here. Slowly progressing. Sorry, I have some songs in my head. I might accidentally just start singing. I feel so comfortable. Whoop. Here's a seed. Okay, there we go. And just set that aside for now. Yeah, and now I'm going to start with the part that looks like baking. Just gonna get the stuff in the compost quickly. go. And just clean off my surface. Wonderful. Okay. So this is going to be where I do most of it, but I think I'm going to get another bowl for my dry ingredients. It's nice to be able to do everything in one bowl, but it does sometimes help to have a couple, one for wet and one for dry. And this is what the recipe says, and I wrote the recipe, so I'm going to listen to it. So I'm just going to measure out 2 cups of flour. This all-purpose flour is what I'm using today. I've also done it with, I've done like half all-purpose and half whole wheat as well. You do taste it though. And I know, especially if you're feeding youngsters, it's not always the most welcome. It's sort of like, something's up with this. But it depends on yourself, your family, who you're feeding. So 2 cups of flour. And baking powder, salt. What am I doing? Yeah. Flour, baking powder. Yeah. Just the baking powder and salt. Okay. So 2. I'm having a hard time reading my own recipe. How funny is that? There it is. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. 1 and number 2. And I'm just measuring it out and flattening it so that we're really getting the correct measurement. Because with this type of stuff, it does matter. Getting it right will affect the rise if we don't get it correct. And I think I said 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. We're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon in this because I think it's okay to have a little extra salt in these things, in my experience. And I'm going to also add the cardamom in here now as well. I'm going to do a teaspoon of that. Oh, it smells so good. And the reason, well, I mean, I love cardamom, but it's also very floral. And so I think it goes so nicely with pears. Just really having a flower party over here. I'm going to grab a whisk. And I have this tiny little guy. And so all I'm doing is trying to make sure there's no like big lumps, and also just mix the baking powder and the cardamom all in together. And the salt, of course. And then when we mix it in with our wet ingredients, it will be a little bit of everything will get into everything else and just be a nice, smooth situation. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is add in our butter, which I've had out for a few hours, so it's sort of at room temperature. It hopefully is. Room temperature is a little cold right now because it is cold here, but I think it will be okay. I'm going to turn my oven on. Just 350. So 2 sticks of butter, a whole cup. It's quite a bit of butter. And I'm going to use the butter that's left on here to grease the pan that I'm using. This is a 9-inch round pan. as thoroughly as you can. Just butter the inside of it. And that's ready to go. Okay, so we have butter. Squish, squish, squish. And then we now are going to add our sugar. And the recipe calls for brown sugar, and we're going to do that. But I don't have brown sugar. I have some white sugar and some molasses, which when put together becomes brown sugar. So that is a hot tip you guys are learning today, hopefully. This is something I do all the time. Actually I love the flavor of brown sugar, but I don't keep it around very much because it gets hard, it gets clumpy. And yeah, there are a lot of ways to manage that, but you can basically have the same thing just by keeping some molasses around. So just under a cup of sugar and another third of a cup, which I'm slightly overdoing because I under measured my last cup. And there's a lot of different ratios. I would say I'm going to add about a tablespoon of molasses in here. You can measure that out. But you can do less or more depending on how dark. Like, there's different grades of brown sugar. There's the light brown sugar and the medium, and then there's the demerara, which is very sort of dark. And you can gauge that for yourself, what you're wanting. And so you can see. Oh, I really love this part. It's butter and sugar. Like, duh, right? Amazing. But also it really brings back memories. These are some of the first things I did with my mom when I was little, was mixing the butter and sugar together for some baked something or other. I'm just adding in a bit of cardamom into this purely for my own pleasure, because I want to smell also cardamom here right now. And it doesn't hurt at all to add it in at this point. Why not? Because this process is all just for us, the people baking. Why shouldn't we amp up the joy we're getting from it? You can do this with an electric mixer, a handheld, or I have a stand mixer, which I use, but it's just as easy to do it with by hand. And I think I choose to do it a lot that way, just to have less to clean, and also because it brings back those sweet memories where I remember I just felt so proud of being able to mix it all so nicely together and have this smooth butter sugar mix. It was always incredible to see how much it changed from, these completely separate textures all into one thing. And it was hard work too. I mean, my muscles would be sore afterwards, and that felt good. I've always liked the feeling of my muscles being a little bit sore, having to work hard at something physically. My body is very happy and responsive to exercise. I think most people's are, really. We just may have a bit of an aversion to any sort of pain, and so think, oh, it hurts though, it's hard. But if we think about something that's hard in our bodies, often what comes with it is a nice rush of endorphins, of good hormones that help you to do it. And so it depends on how you associate. Do you associate with, oh, it hurts, or do you associate with that, the pride and the good feelings that come with it? As you can see, it's getting more, the butter is mixing with the sugars, becoming a little more homogeneous. take a moment to appreciate the smell once more. So nice. This is cake. This is a treat. This is a special occasion thing. I'm going to share this. And it's special. I mean, I like to think, of course, that every single time we make food for even just ourselves, it's special. But there is something even more special about a special occasion treat. This looking so beautiful. My younger self would be proud. We have, and as you can see, it just looks like I've mixed brown sugar and butter together because I did. All right, and so I could be super, super obsessive and try to get every last little streak of butter mixed, but I think we're gonna leave it at this point and see what else we have to add. I believe we're almost there. We just have some vanilla. I always struggle with this lid, getting it off. Let's see. There we go. How much vanilla did I suggest? 1 teaspoon. More floral. More just like magically glorious, special aromas. That is my very fast oven. Unusually quick oven. Now we're going to add the eggs one at a time. One egg. And it can be nice to do this with an electric mixer, like I said, because it is really good. Again, this is something as a kid, I was into it, let me tell you. And still am, obviously. Obviously, I'm still a kid. But we want to really mix in that egg. And this is just becoming so much looser just from that one. We want to allow it to get a little fluffy. Because that's going to add some height to our cake. We already have the baking powder that's going to do that, but the beating the egg a little longer will also do that. And any kind of, when we're making a cake, we do not want to mix it very much once we have our flour in there because the flour has gluten in it. And gluten in bread, of course, creates these big open pockets. And we want to really work the gluten to allow it to have the texture that we want. But in a cake, we actually don't want to work the gluten very much or it becomes a little bit tough. We want it to be really, really tender. So we'll add everything we need to really beat and sort of mix a lot. We add in before we add those things in. That's why we have it the way that it is and we don't just dump it all in together. Sometimes you can dump it all in together, but not in this type of a cake. Woohoo! And I'm using this spatula, which is kind of goofy. Like you could use a wooden spoon or a whisk actually would be really great. I just don't like having to clean the big whisks. Oh, that sound, right? Should we just be quiet for a moment and appreciate this crazy sound? Oh, so good. I'm gonna sneak a tiny bit. So good. All right. Have I forgotten anything? No, we have our butter, we have our pears, our cardamom and flour, baking powder, sugar, salt, vanilla, and eggs. Yep. So all we have to do is this. Woo-hoo-hoo. I'm just moving some of this out of the way. Now I'm going to just gently, you could try folding this in, if you know that technique. It sort of means to bring it up and over. It's really a technique that we use to try to just be gentle in the way that we are working the butter mixture in with the flour to sort of keep you from overworking the batter. That's the whole point of it. So if that particular action is just awkward to you, that's also okay. You can just kind of just be sure that you're being sort of slow and mindful and gentle, but still with purpose. You can see like I'm using my muscles to try to get this. I'm not sort of, you don't want to be tentative with it. We want this to be mixed together. We don't want to have any pockets of flour. That would be gross. But at the same time, we want to mix it just enough so that it is not overworked in any way. It remains lovely and tender. You're getting close to the point where we can see there are no more bits of flour. Still a little here and there. Just keep going. This is a bit of a different cake batter than what you might be used to. It's all butter. And so often in most cake recipes, there's more liquid involved. And so this kind of looks like cookie dough, actually. And it is quite a lot like cookie dough. It's really like cookie dough with fruit floating in it. All right. There it is. And now we're going to bring over our pan. We're going to take about half the batter, just approximately. And spread that. Yeah, really cookie dough-like. Maybe I'll do a little bit more just for ease. And it looks sort of like, oh my gosh, how is this going to be enough for all these pears? But it really, with all that baking powder and the eggs in it, it puffs up a bunch and will encase. And we're going to do a layer of pears, and then we're going to add the rest in and do another layer of pears. And we'll see how we get on with the pears that we have. I think half of them will be 24. Let's see how that looks in this layer. We might add an extra. We'll see. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. You see, let's make sure you can all see nicely. Go. You can see I'm just sort of placing them down, generally trying to create a bit of a circle. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, I think we're going to need another pear. That's great. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So that would be half. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Ooh, oh, there's my wayward lemon seed. 29. 30. There we go. We want 32, but we'll just add more in the next layer. I'm going to add the rest. Bloop. So there will be pears suspended in the cake in the middle and then on top as well. It's obviously like kind of the more rustic, like coffee cake type cake, not a layered birthday cake. I love this type of cake though, and it's all in one. You're done. These are beautiful and special. They're a celebration of the in-season fruit, which I'm also a big fan of doing. Again, I think it's sort of a celebration of just like where we really are, which, you know, is what all of this is about. Being in the right here, right now. And when we celebrate things when they're in season, that's what we're doing. Getting ourselves in sync with nature, or, you know, some version of nature. With each other. It feels good. And this is it's a very forgiving cake. It will, I promise you, it will all sort of even out and puff up. You don't get it sort of into every corner. Do not worry at all. Okay, lovely, lovely. So good. I'm washing my hands now, don't worry. Although I always say this, it doesn't really matter because we're also about to bake this thing. So everything's going to get very hot. And any germs that I added will be destroyed in the baking process. So sometimes, you know, I know when we're baking with our kids, like I know my daughter will reach into everything and get at it. And sort of like, I've definitely had that thought cross my mind, like, oh, is it okay for me to serve this to other people? And it's like, yeah, it is. If the kid then is like putting their face on the finished product after it, that's another thing. But germs should be no match for the oven. I think I've used all my senses, as always. You know, the sight of this beautiful pear the feel, the aromas are just everywhere. I'm eating. And the sounds. The beautiful slicing sound. Ding. All right. And now layer number 2. And you can, go to town making this like look really fancy. It will change a bit in the oven as the batter sort of moves around. It's incredible actually how much it can change. Sometimes you're like, whoa, how did it move so much? And then other times not. Ooh, so tender. These ones that are so much more ripe are harder to press in because they're just so soft and wow, really interesting to me. Quite beautiful though, if I do say so myself. Wow, yeah, look at that. Let's fit these two. Whoop. Get you in there. Wow. I think that looks so nice. And I wish I could show you the final product on camera, but this is not one of those magic baking shows where I have a second one ready to go. I could do that, but it's not real. Why did I just start doing that? Honestly, I just thought of like this could look nice. A little bit of sugar on top, sparkly. I've seen people do this with tarts all the time. Why not? My hand just said, you should do this right now. So I listened. All right, so I am going to pop this in the oven. And say goodbye to you fabulous, fabulous people. Thank you so much for joining me today. And like I said, I will send around a picture of the finished product. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Please send any pictures of what yours look like to me. I would always love to see that. If anything you're making, just send a quick pic or just give me your feedback. Again, any requests are wonderful. If you make this with different fruit, please let me know. That would be cool. Use a different spice. So good to know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.